Hi everybody. As you can see, I've changed lesson style again. It was taking ages to upload the pictures, the slides from the lesson that I did last time. And so this time I'm going back to basics with a whiteboard and a pen. So I'm sorry the quality isn't great. I hope you can see and I hope you can follow in any case. Okay, so what I wanted to start with today is just a quick note about a mistake that I've seen many times recently. A lot of you are sending, well, no, not a lot of you. Some of you are sending me back writings to correct or exercises. And you're writing, oops, what you can see on the board here. Let me show you this way. I'm sorry, technical difficulties here. So what you can see here, you're writing sorry for the late. Now, this is wrong because in English, late is not a noun. It is an adjective. So you can't possibly say sorry for the late. What you need to write is sorry for the delay. Or if you want to use a different way, you would say sorry, I'm late. Or if you're speaking about the assignment, the work, you could also say, sorry, it's late. Okay, so that's the first note for today. Okay, so for following today's lesson, like last time, make sure that you have in front of you your textbook and notebook for taking notes. And also, I've uploaded into Google Drive, into the group folder, another folder where you'll find all the materials for today's lesson. So make sure that you've got those printed off before you follow the rest of the lesson. So the phrasal verbs that we're going to be looking at, first of all, this is on page 40 of your textbook. And part 1, exercise 1, looks at some of the phrasal verbs that you saw in the reading that you should have done for homework, okay, which was on page 39. So just looking at some of the phrasal verbs that are written on the page here, the first one that you have is to point out. Now, the meaning of point out, probably you saw it from the reading, if you did it, is to make something obvious. Okay, so you could point out the problems in a plan, for example. So to make something evident or obvious. The next one, to stand out, means so the meaning of stand out, meaning when something is different or perhaps noticeable. If your classmate comes into school and she has bright red hair, you might say, oh, she really stands out. Someone might also stand out because they have particularly good marks. Maybe in a test, everybody got 6 or 7. And a couple of people got 10s, and so these people would really stand out in the class. Okay. The next one that we saw was to look down on somebody. Now, if you remember the piece of the photocopy that I gave you at the beginning of the course, your phrasal verb Bible, we've already marked on the sheet this one because we've seen it before. So to look down on, the meaning of to look down on, to disapprove of somebody, okay? And then the opposite, to look up to somebody, meaning you admire someone. The next one, give up, is an easier phrasal verb because obviously give up, we've seen with, for example, give up smoking, where the meaning is to stop doing something. Put up with is another that we've seen. You put up with something. It means you tolerate something. So I can't put up with, or I'm finding it difficult, I can't put up with staying in the house all the time. Okay. If you have really noisy neighbours, you might say, I can't put up with the noise day and night. Okay. The next one is another that we've seen before, to come up with. So to come up with a plan, to come up with an idea. So meaning to have, or to have, to invent something. And the final one is another that we've seen, to come across. So if you come across a person, it means you meet them by chance. Okay, I came across my friend when I went to the supermarket. Okay. So if you look in your books at exercise 2 there, what you simply have to do is match the definition to the phrasal verb. I've pretty much done that for you with the explanation, but if you want to have a look at that now, then do. Just pause the video, try and do it, and check that you understood my explanation. Okay, the next thing I want to look at is to give you a few more phrasal verbs. I thought perhaps one's particularly related to the event that we're living at the moment, the fact that we're stuck in the house, that there have been a lot of changes. So the first ones that I wanted to look at with you are 3 phrasal verbs that are related to time. So let me show you the board. So I want you to imagine for a moment that there's a concert, and the concert is scheduled for the 20th of March. Okay. So what's generally happening at the moment is that concerts are being postponed. So a phrasal verb that we use to postpone is to call off. So if you call off, sorry, did I say postpone? I meant to say cancel. So when an event is cancelled, we say it is called off. Okay. Another possibility that can happen to an event at the moment is that it isn't perhaps called off, but it is simply sent to a later date, what you would say in Italian, rimandato, posticipato. In English, what we say in this case is the concert is put off. Okay, so the concert has been put off until the 22nd of March. Now, the other situation when it doesn't happen usually, but sometimes people can decide to do the concert earlier than they originally intended. In this case, the phrasal verb would be to bring forward. Be careful of the pronunciation of this word, not forward, but forward, like the car. Okay, so to bring forward. So some other phrasal verbs that I've thought of that are particularly connected to the fact that at the moment we're spending a lot of time at home, and so perhaps we're doing things that we should have done a long time ago, but for one reason or another, perhaps it's a job that we don't particularly like or want to do, we've been putting it off. As we saw before, we've been postponing it. So in this case, a phrasal verb that we can use, you can see at the top here, to get round to. Now, I can't think of a translation of this in Italian, but it's basically the idea of finally doing something that you've been postponing for a long, long time. So normally something unpleasant. This is a true example for me that during this week, I finally got round to tidying my garage. It's something that I've been meaning to do for years, probably, and finally now I have the time to do it. Okay, related to the idea of tidying something. So I've been tidying my garage, and I've been throwing out, or I've been throwing away old newspapers, or all of the things that I don't need to use anymore. Okay. Another thing that people are doing at the moment, catching up with someone. Now, that means kind of speaking to people, perhaps people that you haven't spoken to for a while, and you're finding out their news. Obviously, we're catching up with people online because we're not allowed to go out and meet people. But so yeah, if you catch up with someone on Skype, it means that you speak to each other, you tell each other your news. And similarly, when you catch up on something, it has a similar meaning, but you're talking about an object or a TV series, for example. At the moment, I'm catching up on all of my Netflix series. Probably when you're at school, you don't have time to do these things. And so this could be obviously when you've finished your homework, it's a good opportunity to catch up on your favorite series. Just one thing I've thought of, a nice expression that we use related to watching TV series. We say this in English. Can you see the blue pen? Yes. To binge watch. So, speaking particularly about what people are doing at the moment, it means you don't just watch one episode of a series, but perhaps you watch the entire season in one day. So you'd say, I'm binge watching The Crown. You're probably not binge watching The Crown, but I would be. Um, so binge is often used related to eating or related to alcohol when you consume a big quantity in a short period of time. So it's not a phrasal verb, it was just something that came into my mind speaking about TV series. So the final three that I want to look at, always related to the same topic. So the first phrasal verb here, to come or to go down with something. This is always related to illness. So obviously at the moment it's very, very topical. So you can go down with flu, for example. You go down with a stomach bug, for example. Um, Turn down, now of course you know turn down related to volume. So again, maybe you have a neighbor at the moment who plays very loud music. You might say turn down your music. But another meaning of turn down is to refuse something. So you might have to turn down a friend's invitation to go out at the moment. You have to refuse it. And finally, this one I think is familiar to everybody. Something that you look forward to doing, something that you're happy or excited about doing in the future. So at the moment, everybody is thinking about the things that they can't wait to do when this situation finishes. I'm looking forward to meeting my friends, to just having a walk, to having an aperitivo, etc. So lots of different things that we're looking forward to. Now, with these phrasal verbs that I've just shown you, what I suggest you do, try and write them down in your notebooks. Write them down, perhaps with the example that I've given, or making up your own example. And also on the worksheet, on the phrasal verb worksheet, make sure you put a little tick next to them, just so we know that we've seen them. We've seen them before. And what I'd like you to do for homework, I've put a worksheet in the drive, and I'll send it to you as well. There's an exercise that I'd like you to do related to phrasal verbs. So try and do that before the lesson next week. And then next week I will post you the answers to that exercise. So if you have a look now at the exam task, which is on page 40, so this is the one where you have multiple choice and you have to choose the correct word that fits in each space from the 4 possibilities. Some of the answers to these are the phrasal verbs from the previous exercise. So have a go, and then afterwards I'll tell you the answers. So the answers to this exercise, you can see them on the board. So number 1 was to come up with. So he said, I have to come up with a way of persuading my family. I have to think of a way of persuading my family. Number 2 was up, because it's the phrasal verb give up, which means to stop thinking about something, or here to stop. He'd almost stopped thinking about the idea. Number 3 was B, unexpectedly, something that happened without warning, something that he didn't think would happen. Number 4 was D, I quickly adapted to the American way of life. Don't forget here, another way of saying adapt to something is to get used to something. So in this case, it would also be got used to, because we're speaking in the past. Number 5, speaking about the films and books I'd come across, so that I'd discovered by chance. Number 6 was C, familiar. Many things seemed familiar to me. Number 7 was D, only. So here you see one of the structures that we use in English, not only, fill the space, but also. Let me give you another example. The Cambridge exam tests not only your speaking skills, but also your reading skills. Okay. And finally, number 8 speaks about difficulty in achieving, letter A, in achieving a goal. So remember that the verb achieve is a collocation with a goal. Okay, so you achieve a goal. It's like if you're speaking about a dream, you might fulfill a dream or realize a dream. So the next thing that we need to look at in the book, I'm sorry, it's a very kind of grammar heavy lesson today, but what we need to do is the conditional forms. That this is page 41 in your book. Now, I'm not going to make you a video explanation about conditionals, because on the internet there already exists an absolutely brilliant, there's a brilliant guy. In a moment I'll show you the board. The series is called Papa Teach Me, and he's a young guy that basically gives very, very humorous explanations of grammar points, vocabulary. He draws as well while he explains, and I think he explains very clearly. He's easy to understand, but also very humorous. So rather than try and compete with him, who's far more interesting and also much more technological than I am, I'd like you to watch the video. Let me show you here. So if you go onto YouTube and basically in the search engine, you write Papa Teach Me, and you'll find millions of videos that he's done. I promise that after you've watched one, you will want to watch others as well. But for this particular lesson, choose the video that is all of the conditionals. It's a video of about 8 minutes, but he looks at all the 4 conditional forms from the 0, 1, 2, more actually, 0 conditional, 1, 2, 3, and also he looks at what we call the mixed conditional. What we're most interested in is from the 0 to the 3rd conditional. Okay, so have a look at that video, and also in your book on page 82, there's a grammar reference about conditionals, which also explains, it gives quite a clear explanation. So have a look at that as well. So pause your video now and go and watch this YouTube video. now, and after I'll continue with the explanation of some of the other points, and I'll give you an exercise to do. So I hope you enjoyed the film. I feel a bit inadequate now after his brilliant performance, but anyway, use his videos as a way to improve. If there are language areas that you're not sure about, type them into the search engine, and there should be some good explanations about them. Of course, you can contact me as well. That's no problem. But as you have the internet available to you, use that as well. Okay, what I'd like to explain, this is looking at some of the structures in exercise 5 on page 41. So you've looked at the conditional forms. There are also some words and phrases that we use in English that are related to conditions. Some of these words, if you look on the board, I've written here, provided or providing that, and the expression as long as, we also say so long as. Now this, the meaning of these phrases in English is on condition that. So if you look at my example, a mother might say to her young child, if it's cold, if it's winter, you can go out as long as you take a coat. Okay, you can go out on condition that if you take a coat. Here you can use whichever one of these phrases you want. The meaning is exactly the same. You can go out provided that you take a coat. You can go out so long as you take a coat. The next expression your book mentions in exercise 5 is in case. Now this is very simply the meaning of because something might happen. So if you look at my example, when you ride a bicycle, you should wear a helmet in case you fall off. Okay, nothing too complicated about using in case. I've just added this final part here. You sometimes see in situations around you this expression, in case of emergency, press the button. If you're in a lift, if you're in a train, for example, on an aeroplane, in case of emergency, call the hostess or put on the life jacket. Okay, so just be aware that in this case, you have in case of followed by a noun form. And the last expression in your book is unless. Okay, so the meaning of unless in English is except if. And this translates in Italian with when you say a meno che non something. So if you look at my example, you're not going out unless you finish your homework. Now, a thing that you have to remember here is the difference between English and Italian. I'm sorry about my accent and if I'm wrong, but in Italian, I think you'd say non esci a meno che tu non finisci i tuoi compiti. So notice that in Italian, a meno che tu non, it's negative, okay? In English, unless, the sense of unless is already negative, so you have to use an affirmative verb. It's wrong in English to say you're not going out unless you don't finish your homework. Okay, so just pay attention with the use of unless. And the final example I've written here, you won't pass unless you study. Sorry, my examples are always about parents or teachers or things that we say to students or kids. So the meaning here, if you don't study, you won't pass. Okay. Now, just to check that you've understood everything that we've looked at about conditionals and the phrases that I explained to you in the previous part, I'd like you to try and do this exercise now. You can find it, I've sent it to the group, and also you can find it in your group drive. It's called Conditionals Worksheet. And so Pause the video, try and do it now, and then afterwards I'll have a look at the answers with you. Okay, so it looks like this basically. Should take you about 10 minutes. Okay, so have fun. All right, so just to look at the answers now. So here we are. So in the first sentence, you should have chosen a third conditional. In B, it's a second conditional. C again is another third conditional. We're speaking about a situation in the past. In D, it's a first conditional. You've got present simple plus will in the second part of the sentence. In E, you could both say I would speak or I could speak French well. We're speaking about a second conditional. It's a hypothetical situation. With F, so I'd buy that bag if it were cheaper. Be careful here because instinctively you'd say it was, but because we're speaking about the second conditional, we have to use were. This was explained in the video before about the conditionals. G, a second conditional. H, a third conditional, speaking about a past situation of going skiing. And here I also included a couple of sentences with I wish and if only. This was explained in the previous video that I posted last week. So here we're speaking about last night, a situation in the past. So you need to use the past perfect. I wish I had won the lottery last night. Instead, in J, you have to think, what is the reality? The reality is that I can't now, in the present, go out and see my friends. So you need to transform the verb into the simple past, which is could. Now, the second sentence, it's obviously completing it with your own words. So I've just put this here for some ideas for you to look at. If you just look at B, this isn't related to the conditional, but in English, if you say to a child, behave, oh, please behave, it's understood that we're intending behave well, behave in a good way. Okay, so you can include the word well or also leave it out. Let's have a look. Okay, and then let's continue down. So in this exercise, you needed specific answers. So A, I'm playing tennis tomorrow as long as it doesn't rain, on condition that it doesn't rain. On the other hand, in B, I'm playing tennis tomorrow unless it rains, meaning if it doesn't rain. Okay, in C, we'll go out for a meal unless you prefer to stay home. D, take your jacket in case it rains because it's a possibility that it could rain. And in E, you'll pass the test as long as you study every day. Now, in this exercise, I didn't give provided that or providing that as an alternative, but obviously in every situation where you use as long as, this would also be possible. Okay, so just before we finish, the other thing that I would like you to do for homework this week is on page 41, the exam task, which are the sentence transformations, which is the one that we need most practice with, I think. So just to recap everything, first homework is to do the phrasal verbs worksheet that you can find. I will send to you, or you can find it in the group drive. The second thing is this exam task on page 41. What I will also do, I'll put this in the drive as well, is another complete practice test. Okay. What I would like you to do in your own time, again, before the end of the month, so before the lesson, I guess on the 31st of March, I'd like you to try to have completed that. Obviously, you can try and do the exam when you have a free moment. What I would ask is that you try and stick to the time limits, and also try to do both of the writing questions this time, and send them to me and I'll correct them. Okay, I hope you've managed to follow everything in this video. If you haven't, then get in touch with me. I'm here. You can email me, you can send me a message. Um, just because I don't see you doesn't mean that you can't contact me, because if you have a doubt about anything, I would rather you asked me than to not know. Okay, have a good week. Let's hope things start to improve soon and keep in touch. Okay, bye.